Welcome to Squatchin Holler.
In the mist where the trees lean low, Squatchin Holler's got a tale to show. Whispers creep like a creature's faint howl. Every shadow's got a secret to growl. Monsters rise where the stories are told. Squatchin Holler where the legends are born. Are they here? Are they gone? Who can say? In the holler, the truth just slips away. Huge footprints fade where the creek runs thin. A lantern sways, let the search begin. Rustling leaves, but there's no one near. Is it the wind or the beast you fear? Every echo's a question, every rustle's a clue. Squatchin Holler's got its eyes on you. Monsters rise where the stories are torn. Squatchin Holler where the legends are born. Are they here? Are they gone? Who can say?
With your Squatchin Holler hosts, Roger Williams, Amanda Stowers, and Ashley Range. Remember, this podcast can be downloaded everywhere great podcasts are found. And now the show.
Hello, hello.
Hello. Amanda is good. How is Roger?
I'm doing pretty good. I won't complain because what old Lou Holtz used to say, if you complain to people, 90% of the people don't care, and the other 10% are glad at you. So,
oh, true. That's true.
But yeah, everybody, you get older, and if you just feel lucky to be here, you hadn't reached that point yet, so you
getting there.
Thank everybody for being here. We've I don't know how many episodes this is here now, but on our thumb
was
45.
Yeah, we are on episode 46.
46. I forgot.
Yes,
somebody.
Sir.
So actually we've got part 2 with Bama on the thumbnail, but it's probably really like part 5 or so, because he's got the record for being on Squatchin Holler the most. But and what's cool about getting to know people. We went to the LBL, the meet and greet, and there's 100 and something people there, and nobody was talking about Bigfoot. Nobody. We all get to know talk about, ask how everybody's doing, and it's just a great time. And of course, Bama, that's where he got, some of his first taste of some weirdness, and we'll talk
about that.
Yeah, we'll talk about weird stuff tonight. And there's so many things we can talk about. We have to pick and choose for different shows. And there's some people like, oh, that's a bunch of crap. But what they don't realize is us three, you included, Amanda, have seen and had weird stuff happen while we're doing other things. And we're just trying to figure out what it is, or just, tell people what we've experienced. So let's bring Mr. Bama on. Oh my God, y'all.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, he kept that a secret.
You did not tell me you were bringing that out the tinfoil tonight, sir.
Well,
I would have had mine.
I figured we were probably be talking about some weird stuff. I figured I better put my tinfoil hat on for a minute.
Amanda, you look like a Hershey's Kiss.
Well, let me tell you what. In about the 30 seconds it took me and Kel to make this, we just kind of pulled some foil out and, kind of whipped it off. and it wouldn't even go all the way around my head. So, I've even got a kind of a gap in the back like this.
I think it's interfering with your signal.
You think so?
Or you might be
you're coming in all blurry on us now.
Yeah.
I didn't want anything, reading my brain waves or, anything along that line. But that is
too late in this day and age.
Well, with your former job and me growing up on the interstate, coming in contact with multiple people a day from everywhere, I've had people walk in that probably took their aluminum foil off their head before they came in, and I'm not being funny. They've actually told me that they get hit with stuff, government power be that after them. And the one thing I learned a long time ago, and Bama, you being in law enforcement, you learned this too. Never disagree with a legit crazy person. Always kind of just handle them with baby gloves, kid gloves, and all that. And act like you're interested and let them go on.
Well, I always called it, you got to learn how to ride the wave. It's like talking to a drunk person. So, they have these, these peaks and valleys. And, if you don't, trying to brawl, everybody wanting to brawl with you, you have to learn to kind of like, flow with that or whatever.
Yeah.
It's funny. We was talking about the tinfoil. I worked special operations for a while. But I always worked the same area of town. For some reason, I came back to these housing projects, for 17 years. And there was a car coming through there one night, Roger, in a very late hour. And I was just kind of, following the guy, kind of seeing where he's going, just kind of making a straight shot through the projects. And I thought, I'm just going to light this guy up. Well, when I did, the one thing you learn in law enforcement is when you stop somebody, the first thing you do is you flood the car with lights. Yeah. So, takedowns on top, you always put your spotlight in their mirror, all this type of stuff. That car lit up so bright on the inside. Well, I always had a tendency of, man, I'd exit the vehicle and go around the back of mine. I'd come up on your passenger side at night, especially. And I shined my light, and the entire interior of that car was coated in tinfoil. Everything. And he was wearing one of those zip-up foil suits like you exercise in to lose weight. And he had on a tinfoil hat and everything. The steering wheel, every single thing was tinfoil. And it just surprised me because it was so bright in there. Well, I talked to the guy for a minute. Sure enough, he's trying to keep EMF waves and radio waves and this, that, and the other. And, to end the story, about when he would cross the bridge over into a different precinct, I had back then we used a lot of CBs and we used a lot of Nextels just to talk candidly back and forth to each other. Mm-hmm. And so I called one of my buddies and I said, "Hey man, there's a car got away from me over here and I don't know where he went. I think he came over the bridge towards you." And he stopped this guy at the Nashville Fairgrounds. And by the time he stopped him, maybe 2 or 3 more cars showed up. So it kind of looked like a big, a fair going on, but people were just bored really. And it got real quiet on the radio for a while. And in a second, they all started calling me and they were laughing, And it was just funny because I'd sent the guy over there. I forgot who it was, but he called me. He goes, "You so did that on purpose." I said, "Of course I did." I go, "You send your drunks across the bridge to us and your mental people across the bridge to us, but
well,
anyway."
And for y'all that don't know where the Nashville Fairgrounds is, it's a pretty rough place, or it used to be. I don't know if it still is or not.
Oh, it's all getting very fancy and contemporary and modern looking, over there.
I've seen like one side of the street is like really nice houses, and the other side of the street they hadn't started working on yet. And
Right.
and it's like it's amazing. I won't get into it, but all these people moving to Nashville, everything's changing. I don't know where people are going. I
I
mean,
got to blow my nose here. Hang
all right. So y'all, if none of you have seen Bama before, I love his storytelling, and I think we sat for 3 hours out in the dark talking just about the jobs. And
Well, Roger was, who was it? It was you and your son
mhm,
and his wife,
his girlfriend, and then
his girlfriend, and
and
your
Heather.
wife.
Yeah.
And honestly, when I started talking to him, I thought these seem like the type of people that can really handle a truthful, vivid story. So
Right.
I laid out some stuff, and I don't know if they,
Oh no, it was talked about afterwards. Peyton loved it. Bree loved it. Heather, she just sits and listens. Like she's always like that. So, if you're around her and she's not saying much, I didn't know. We dated for 3 months for I figured I didn't know if she liked me or not. So she's just quiet. She listens. Yeah, it was no, I love it because I don't have a lot of experience in it, but I've got enough taste of it to understand what you're talking about. And
Yeah.
and the thing that amazes me is, with what we talk about on this show, how many former police officers and detectives and people that are spread all through that type of work, you see something or hear something that you don't understand, and that's just the way you're trained to try to figure it out. And that's kind of how you got started accidentally, wasn't it?
It is. I mean, the things that happened to me at LBL was after I had retired and was started bow hunting up there. And so, I'm literally one of those people that when I came from the small town I'm from down here and ended up there, my mind was like a piece of clay. So everything that I was taught in the academy and taught by people and all kinds of stuff like that. And listen, I have to say this before I ever get into this type of stuff. I'm nobody. I don't think I'm anybody. I've done some things over the years, lots of things that I can't talk about, it seems, but I tell Kel all the time, I go, my mind is just full of insignificant knowledge that I'll never will use anywhere anymore, but yeah, my mind was just kind of like, clay. So anything that they taught me, I kind of thought that that's the way things were. So by the end of my career, everything really fit into categories and subcategories. And you always hear me say this, the memory bank or the Rolodex of your brain,
I've used that many times after you said that. I always refer to Bama.
And, but that really was the way my brain was. So what got me, and I won't get into the story, but what got me into it was the things that happened. I did my normal thing. I went through my brain quickly, and then later on, I researched logical things. Everything with me had to do with logic and, things along that line. And then that's how I ended up, finding the good group of people that I got in with, which grew to the Woodwalkers group, which grew into Squatchin Holler. And there's just so many offshoots of the original, like 5, 6, 7 people, that's always a neat thing. Yeah. It's funny, I pull Spencer aside. I guess I'm a little more sentimental about stuff, but I always pull him aside at the meet and greet, and I go, man, look at this. I go, look at how many people came from so many different places, simply because they listen to something that you have, that you put on,
Mm-hmm.
and then I always tell them, and you came from here and blah, blah, blah. But,
Yeah. And for y'all that don't know, I mean, you've actually hosted shows on Sawdust Beast, right?
yeah,
And
if
done
you went to,
interviews.
yeah, I'll tell you what, and this doesn't have anything to do with me, but one of my episodes on Sawdust Beast had more views than like all of them together or something. And that's simply because I got Vic Cundiff to come on to the
Yeah.
show. Yeah. And Vic had called me one time, and I'm sure everybody knows who Vic is. And he said on the week leading up to Halloween, he goes, I would like to have a different Bigfoot channel host a show leading up to Halloween. And then he said, and then I want you on Halloween to have a show and you interview somebody. And this wasn't when I had Vic on. I mean, that would have been the perfect thing. But I had Elijah Henderson on. And Elijah's he's a, LBL expert, not just on Bigfoot and dog men, but lore. And, he's a historian, man, well-traveled.
Mm-hmm.
And his late father was too.
Yep.
But,
and if I remember correctly, I was told, Vic kind of come from all of this too, right? He was involved with some of the people back in the day that, you talk about the branches on the tree. I'm kind of a little bit of one, a small one, but y'all, I didn't know all these people. Everybody talks like, oh, you didn't know that? I'm like, no, I came along later. But I found out Vic used to go researching with people that right? And y'all would hang out and all that. So y'all have actually got to see Vic. What Vic, he don't show his face.
Oh, I can see the chat here. Thanks for Hillary for putting that up there. And it's funny, I got to mention something that I saw Pyro say on here. He just said, I will watch that show specifically to see what Vic Cundiff looked like. Did you notice that?
Did it show his face?
Well, I'm going to tell you, nobody knows what Vic looks like.
Yeah.
Not even me. And I speak to Vic on the phone, and I don't know what he looks like. So, but I think a lot of people watch the show because they thought that there was going to be Vic in the square there.
And I did the same thing when he was on Woodwalkers. I thought the same thing. Then they had the little circle put up there, and he's a super nice guy. He talked to Amanda and I way back before we came over here, and he's super helpful. He's, you can look at his Facebook. He cares about everybody. And the dog thing is cool. I know that's probably something y'all have in common. And man, it just breaks my heart when you post stuff, but he usually gets results. It gets results. People adopt dogs.
Well, he has such a good following that he's able to get it out there to more people, and he's using that platform as a way to do that. And I think that's great. And commenting on the fact that, he doesn't show his face, I honestly think he's really smart in that aspect, in what he does, and as far as he's gotten out here in the quote unquote cryptid community. I hate that terminology until I find something else. Anyway, because it can be vicious. And I think it's really smart of him to do that.
Yeah, he's one of those people that he's one of those people that I text Merry Christmas to or Happy Thanksgiving to, and but it's weird how I told Spencer, I said you should be proud of the thing that's going on here,
and y'all, for y'all that haven't had a chance to make it, I was nervous the first time. I've said this before, because me and Bama was a little bit alike on big crowds, but maybe because of what we did for a living and being around strangers. But that's one of the only big crowds I've ever been around where I felt the energy felt safe, the people, you know, most everybody there has your back, you know, and it's just a great get together. And like I said before, you know, we didn't talk about cryptids, Bigfoot or anything, Dogman, anything like that, and just had a
Mhm.
great time. But I will tell you this, Bama, I got taken to the field of the 13 Hows for the first time. So now I know, you know, where some of these things that y'all talk about, and
Who
I
took
believe
you there?
I ain't telling.
You
No,
ain't telling.
no, Spencer, it was my idea because everybody, you know, it was on Thursday night.
Oh,
I'm like, "Hey"
was this during the last meet and greet?
yeah, yeah.
Oh,
So
okay. Yeah. Okay.
so so I was like, "Look, y'all have been all these places, I hear about them, and
Yeah.
I don't know where they're at." So we went there, and you're right, it's really close to where the Dogman Thermal, Joe, Pat, and,
Very,
Robert.
very close to it.
Yeah, I mean,
And
it was
if
a cro
you and
Mhm.
if you follow the creek, then it ends up correlating with where we ended up camping out in the woods, where something walked by and stepped down about 4 inches from my head in the tent. You know,
Yeah,
so it was neat to kind of. Yeah, I'm still glad that I named it the Field of 13 Hows, because it 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 gives the respect to the people that recorded it, which was Mark and
mhm.
Shelley and Debbie and Larry. Uh, but that's almost, you know, when you look at it now with the things that's happening, it's almost like our own weird LBL triangle, like the
Yep,
Alaskan Triangle. You know,
yeah,
now we have because it really is an area, you know, kind of off. If you look at it, you know, Google Earth or a topo map, it really is kind of a bowl down in there that
perfect
covers several miles with creeks running through it.
perfect
Lots of
travel way.
lots of fields, but uh, just from me reading things and, you know, listening to accounts and stuff like that, lots of fields, but they all have those tree lined ditches or creeks running between them where something can just drop right off down into you know, down low into one of those creeks and just, you know, go from place to place.
Yeah, and it's,
Perfect
I
little
saw
pathways.
well, it is, you know, without saying too much, it's a perfect corridor. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
from coming from a hunter's background, I went in the area a few times, didn't know that was the area, and so when they told me where we were going or when we pulled up, I'm like, "Oh, crap, this is where I was thinking it would be a perfect travel way," you know, because of the ridges and the creeks and, you know, whatever. I don't wanna say too much, but, um,
Well,
and
that's really, you know, while we're talking about it, since we're going to talk about strange stuff tonight, that's really where I saw the weirdest light anomaly I've ever seen. Of all the things to happen at the Field of 13 House, I mean, Field of 13 House is known for vocals. I
Mhm.
mean, that's what you go there for. And I would say, yeah, maybe a 50 or 60% success rate of all the times I've been there. Just kind of depending on how many cars and stuff.
Right.
But, and the only reason I'll tell you this is because there were several people there that witnessed this that night. And this was on the roadway at the Field of 13 House. Well, we had several people with us, but I'll just say who was close around me. But I'm going to estimate that there was probably 8 to 10 people standing out on that road, because what we would do when we were there a lot of times, and we did it the last meet and greet, some group will go hit that place maybe up around midnightish or so, and then if they get something, then nobody else will go back there. If they don't get anything, then maybe somebody else will come back and hit it about, you know, 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
So somehow all of our vehicles had ended up there at the same time. So here we ended up at the same time. So luckily, by that time, everybody had been trained enough to don't slam doors and don't
Right.
scuffle your feet, and this and that and the other. And but anyway, several people are out there that I could name all of them, but the closest person standing to me was Debbie Porch is standing next to me, even though she wasn't in the vehicle with me. And, you know, 2 or 3 cars, and then up there at the front somewhere is Barry Browning. Well, most of those people, including Barry, doesn't know what's off that roadway.
Right.
Debbie and I, and maybe 2 other people, we know where the places are at that I call Hog Pond, which is a beautiful spring-fed, clear pond up in the woods. That we did put Bob Angie put a game cam on that pond while we were at the meet and greet up there. But anyway,
I think Pyro said he went back with him to retrieve them later.
Yeah. And the hogs have really got it. And I saw early hog sign because I was kind of looking at stuff like a hunter, and they really had started to even wear the bark off the trees down to the soft, just rubbing the mud off and stuff like that. And I looked at the game cam photos, and now those trees, they had eroded the sides back far enough up under the root balls that some trees had fallen into the pond.
Wow.
All to say, Debbie and I knew where the pond was at, where the backfields were at, and we're just kind of standing there next to each other. And we, as usual, we all probably stood out there probably 10 minutes, to let vehicles stop popping and making hot noises and, things along that line. And what's funny is I never know who's going to do a call, and even in this many years of doing this, I always feel like if I do a call, there's going to be 50% of the group that's going to go, what in the world's he doing a call for this early?
Yeah.
I always feel like I'm going to get criticized,
Well, well, look, they're so experienced. They've all done things together. I felt the same way. And I felt like I guess like the middle schooler in the bunch, and I was proud to be there. And what I was impressed with was we got to a certain area. It was on, I'll just say it was on a bridge over some water, and you probably know where that's at. And Kumbo had said they called a dog man up one time, and he told me that after they blocked me in and I couldn't leave. So,
Yeah.
Of course.
so he, and I think he does that on purpose. He don't, I don't think it's an accident that he did that. But anyway, so, he was doing some calls, and some coyotes on the north side went off, and then another call, south side coyotes. But during that, it was dying off, or it just died off. He did another one, and we had 2 boogers, sounded about the same high pitched double. Well, it could have been one maybe that had a dual tone, but then obviously I've never heard an alpha male before until that happened. He started in the middle of that call, and everything around us shut up. But what I was impressed with, I knew what it was, but I've never heard one that deep.
Yeah.
And that, you could tell it was a big boy. Well, anyway, when it started, everybody froze. Spencer had the mic out. Nobody walked over it. Nobody shuffled their feet. Everybody stopped what they were doing, let the mic do its job. And when it was over, Kumbo looked at me. He said, "That was a booger." I said, "I know what that was."
Like, I should hope I know what that is, sir.
Yeah. So, and look, y'all, for people that's never heard them before, they leave no doubt. It's the power, the distance and the power and all that. So,
and LBL is notorious for what I call harmonizing boogers. The first outing I was ever on, and it was me and Spencer were with a bunch of strangers. First time we ever went out. Those had a beginning howl, and Spencer has a good recording of it. There's a beginning howl, and immediately another one comes in behind it, and it's just like maybe a half octave lower, and it's just harmonizing. Oh goodness! Years later, we were at a different part of LBL, but not too far from the Field of 13 house, and I heard the same thing, really close. And Larry had gotten out. Larry was actually, that's back when he would, still do calls a lot. He got out, and oh gosh, I feel like I'm getting long-winded. I apologize, but I have to tell this. It was cold, and we'd been driving dirt roads and stuff like that. Well, we had just hit the Field of 13 house, and it was probably maybe 2:30ish or so in the morning, and we hit it. We didn't have any luck, and I forget. I was basically tired, and I'm following Larry's tail lights because he does know his way around LBL very well. So I'm following his tail lights, and I've got Shelly Reed is sitting behind me, and I've got the heat on, and then the wind's cracked, so there's a little cool air coming in, but it's warm in there. Well, Shelly just conked on out. And if I'd have been a passenger, I'd have taken a nap too, But I forget what we were doing, but we had people that had never gone before. Well, we'd already been to 3 or 4 stops with no luck, and all of a sudden Larry just stops in the middle of the road. Well, Mark has this telescoping pole and that has his recorder on it. And as the door opens for him to get out, always he will telescope that pole up for his foot ever he hits the ground. And I've listened to recordings of both different ways. It does take out a lot of the whispering out and any little shoe shuffling and things along that line. So Larry just pulled up and stopped right in the middle of this dirt road. And I think nobody in the vehicle with me wanted to get out because it was freezing cold and everybody's tired. I said, well, I'm going to get out. But Shelly was right behind me, and Shelly was awake enough to say, listen, just roll. She was, just roll down the window and I'll listen from inside the truck. And I said, okay. So I rolled the window down. Man, by the time that I eased the door and clicked that thing shut, we were kind of up on top of a ridge, and I noticed that right before we stopped, there was a little road ran off to my left, like maybe it would go out a little finger ridge out there somewhere. But Larry had stopped right over the crest of that hill, so I stopped behind him. And he got out. I opened the door, and by the time my feet were hitting the ground, I was closing the door. There was one howl that was my legs are covered in chill bumps right now thinking about it. There was a howl that was so loud, and LBL howls, they're notorious for, they really, if you hear enough of them, they're the same note. And it's right up there high, and it's usually a long, solid one, and then the other one will come in with it. Well, that's what I was getting, but I started getting the first one as I'm closing the door. Well, it shocked me. It was that close. That's the first thing I thought was, oh, man, that's really close. Then the second one chimed in, and it sounded like 2 people howling in harmony. Yeah. With each other, one long note. Well, right then it hit my brain. I thought, yes. I thought, dang, Mark Newell's got his dang telescopy, recorder. And the howl just, and it went on. Ooh, It's just it's just spectacular. And I really thought that's one of the closest, loudest, best ones I've ever heard in my life. But now we can go back to camp. It's freezing cold and I'm tired and I want to go back to camp. Because this was like a camp out with people, where we were taking people out and we wanted them to have fun, I'm thinking, thank God he got it on this recording. Well, as the howl started, Mark had walked up and he didn't telescope the recorder. He just kind of holding it in his hand, walking stick height. Well, he walked up to the side of the vehicle and he asked Shelley, he goes, Shelley, you going to get out? Maybe do a call? And Shelley said, Mark, she goes, it's cold and I'm just tired. I don't feel like getting out and doing a call. And in the background, you can hear those howls on and on. And we really wanted to try to clean it up and try to play it because it was incredible. But Shelley just said, I don't know. I sound like I'm being whiny, or something like that. She goes, they don't realize we haven't slept, in 48 hours and it's cold, so that was another thing that happened there.
Well, we went past, we left the bridge, and some of those roads are pretty rough, y'all. And I wouldn't advise going by yourself, one vehicle, because you get back in there with no signal and you have a flat.
Very, very much places where there's no signal.
And we passed this something, and I caught it out of the corner of my eye. It was on the right side of the truck, and we got down to a main road, and Kumbo was leading. I was behind him. Debbie and Larry had a truckload, and then Spencer and Anthony. We were all together, and so he came up to my window, and I said, "What are we doing?" He said, "Well, I'm gonna go ask them if you want to go to this place or that place." I said, "Hey, by the way, what was that back there on the right side of the road?" I have never seen this look in his eyes. He leaned in. He said, "That is a place that you never, ever go at night. I don't care how many people you have with you." And I'm like, okay, you don't have to tell me twice. And
did he say the name of it?
That's scary.
Yeah.
Or ominous, I should say.
I tell you, that's where you may have heard it, where they found the big bird nest.
No. I don't know if it's been given a name.
Just let's say the Booger House.
Well, let me tell you this. There's really only two places. There's really only two places where I've felt uneasy with people with me. One of them, we just called it the creepy cemetery. I mean, that's, if you even watch any shows, and Spencer's been there 2 or 3 times, it's so claustrophobic. I don't know if it's surrounded by cedar trees, and cedar trees really break up sound a lot, so it doesn't travel through there much. But if you had went in there with your eyes closed right in the back seat of a vehicle, and then they got you out, and then you opened your eyes, you would have immediately felt like it just closed in on you, all of a sudden. It felt like everything was right close to you all the time. The other creepy place is probably the Field of 13 house, just because of all the history.
Yeah.
But I was standing close to Debbie on that road, and with several other people, and Barry Browning was somewhere up towards the front, and we have certain calls we do or have been entrusted with or talked to by other people, and so we have just calls that we're used to that usually get good paybacks. Well, Barry kind of did this modified call and shortened it, and you know how normally when you get out there you just scream your guts out, just screaming your head off. Well, Barry came off with this. It was really smooth and quiet, and it was, I don't know how to say this, it was maybe about a third of the call cadence and call that we do. And of course, I didn't know anybody was going to do a call. And he let off that call. Well, before he did it, we had kind of maybe shuffled away from the group up the roadway a little bit because it's a long straight road, and we were using a thermal. So we're thermaling that field, and also we're kind of watching the field behind because nobody's watching their backs. People have a tendency when they go to the field of 13 house, they just face the field because that's where the howls came from.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they actually came from across the field, across a creek, across a field, and way up a ridge and over the top of the ridge. That's where they originated at. But, so we're kind of watching people's backs. And Debbie goes, look at that light up there. And, and we kind of look up there. And, of course, there's some people close to us. We're not even talking that loud. She goes, look at that light up there. And it's noticeably brighter than all the other lights in the sky, low, above the trees. Now, we're up there, close to Fort Campbell, so you get helicopters and stuff, especially the people at the meet and greet can attest to the fact that sometime a big Chinook might come over a couple of times.
Live during the show.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, they got us.
But, so I'm thinking things along that line. But as I'm looking at it, I told her, I said, well, if that's and it was moving slowly, straight horizontally. And I said, if that is a helicopter, I said, well, that spotlight is remaining completely stationary, facing straight at us then. Mm-hmm. I said, otherwise it would be, I said, I've been in helicopter several times. And we watched it. And it flew over and it stopped. Well, when it stopped there for maybe 10 seconds, we're just looking at it. And I said, that's right over the top of Hog Pond. And I think maybe me and her were the only ones that knew what I was talking about. But I said, I think that's over. I said, that is over the top of Hog Pond. That's when Barry let out that smooth call. I've already got chill bumps before I ever even say it. When he finished that call, there was the longest howl came from Hog Pond, which I've never had one come from that angle before. Well, as soon as it started, I immediately, and there was some low ambient light from starlight and stuff out there. I immediately could see people kind of, turn, that direction. And of course, maybe you get kind of the whisper of, oh, do you hear that? But not much. It was people were really great. When the howl started, everybody really got quiet because we tried to explain to, and I'm telling you what, the first one I heard, I wasn't quiet. Spencer's got it on tape, and I may have even said some things that I shouldn't have said.
You did,
because it jumbled my brain.
Yes,
and we'll talk about that later too. But we're already facing Hog Pond, and now we're talking a quarter of a mile away. So think about a drag strip from one end to the other. That's about how far away we are from Hog Pond, across fields and through the woods, and the light's right above it. When the howl started, we're already facing that direction, and we were just kind of like, whoa, really quiet. The light immediately just went straight down. And when I say it went straight down, it's like it just dropped. It's almost like it was suspended and somebody clipped the wire, and it was that type of velocity as it dropped. Like like when you see a shooting star, how they have kind of like a strange travel to them, Well, it was like that. That's when the entire group just went, whoa. I mean, there just wasn't any being quiet then. We done heard the howl. Now the light comes down. And I mean, even I was just like, oh, and we're just like grabbing each other's arms in the dark, and I like telling that one because there were so many witnesses there, to see that light thing take place.
Is that the one where Debbie said that it looked like there were sparks dripping off of it and falling down? Is that the same orb, or is that a different one?
Well, I'll tell you this. Before the meet and greet, for people that were there and for people that weren't there, I try to have a little camp out every year, and invite people, or just and tell them invite a couple of people, and I'm not trying to do a giant thing, but I usually do it somewhere around Thanksgiving, maybe a little before, a little after, something like that. So this year we were at Bankhead, and there was a few people there. And Coonbo was there, and Greg came by because we're close enough to where people can go visit Greg's man cave, things like that. Lots of hiking. So I had a group there, maybe 10 people. Wendell is on here. He was there. And we're just sitting there one night. This is one of three strange things that happened. One that I just cannot explain. There's no way to explain it. But we had just got back from somewhere, and it was dark. And I was at the back of my truck, and I had to tailgate down. I had my FLIR around my neck, and we had a nice fire going. Everybody's sitting around the fire. And Rodney walked off, and there's a little road that goes through the campground. This is primitive campground. We're the only people there. He walks to the little road.
Same place I tried to find you that time and couldn't find you?
No, that is a campground that has a restroom and camping spots and stuff, So we're just kind of scattered out, but we're sitting around the fire, and Rodney walked out there to the little road to relieve himself. And it's probably maybe 7-10 yards at that, just to get out there. Well, I had my FLIR hanging around my neck, and I was kind of messing around the truck. And he says to his wife, he goes, "Karen, come over here a second." And the first thing that I thought was, it has to be something for him to ask Karen to get out of the chair from under a blanket, and she was holding Kel's little fuzzy white dog that we got now. So she got up. That's when I turned my FLIR on to see what they were doing over there, watching her. And that's what I was doing. And I watched her walk over there, and he said something to her. And when I saw him bring his arm up, I thought, oh, he's going to point out into the woods. So I just went ahead and, beat him to it, and just, kind of went to look where he was looking at. Because he has a really good thermal. I mean, Rodney has a good one. Well, when I looked back, he was pointing up into the sky. So I kind of circled back around the truck the other way and came in from where the fire was. And I said, "Man, what are you looking at?" And he goes, "Man, come here and look at this up in the sky a minute." And I said, "All right." And you do one of those deals where you're either right behind somebody or they stand behind you and they run their finger over your shoulder. Mm-hmm. We did one of those deals. And he goes, "Look at that light up there." He goes, "Is that thing moving?" And, I just stood there and watched it for a minute. And it was easy to determine that this was something far away. And when I say far away, I told him, I said, that is far away enough to be over Huntsville or Decatur or that many miles away. But I text Spencer maybe after we had all been sitting and watching it for 3 hours. And we eventually got to where, once you knew where it was, we could sit around the fire and just watch it. the closest movement that I could liken this thing to was a drone. And you know how a lot of times people hover drones and they just, especially when they come to a stop, they kind of have that rocky, rocking like this. That was the only thing that was close to something that would have made these movements straight up and down. It wasn't an airplane. It wasn't a helicopter. And what's weird is if you really we tried to film it. Hold on just a second, please.
Well, what's fun, having people on.
Somebody's at the door. Hang on. All right.
Okay. What's fun about having people on that is like knowing where they're talking about, and what I alluded to earlier. Bama was camping, and I went down to, I think I went to see Greg. Heather and I did, and we were going to go try to find him, but there's no service, no cell service. So he gave me a location, and I had to try to find it the old way, and it was beautiful. Bankhead National Forest is absolutely beautiful, and
I've heard it's pretty.
Yeah, and we thought we were in the right place, and he's right. There was a bathroom, and we walked over. They had a little walkway, a little raised walkway, wooden, and we went over there, and there's like weeds and stuff and trees and the water, and we're standing there out there by ourselves, and I heard a low growl just over the water, and Heather said, "What's that?" I said, "That means it's time to go." I don't know what it is, but it sounded big enough that what I had with me wasn't going to help us none. So, yeah, so we hightailed it back to the truck, and that's another place I don't want to go in, just one vehicle. I was nervous in the daytime, but
I forgot what I was talking about.
Wendell's UFO.
Well, Rodney's the one that spotted it. Well, this is the best way I can describe it. And I told this to Spencer. I said, it looks like a light that's writing in cursive in the sky, and all the letters are writing over each other. So it's simply writing, letters over and over each other. And then every once in a while, it was so crazy that people would just be sitting talking, having on a conversation and watching it. And all of a sudden it would make such a wild maneuver that everybody would go, whoa, like that, So we watched it till we literally went to bed. And one night we went to bed at 2 a.m. The next night it gets dark. And we're like, ooh, Rodney's Comet's going to be here, the Rodney Comet. And it wasn't up there. Well, somewhere between 9:45 and 10 o'clock, there it was again, doing the exact same thing. And we watched it and watched it. Now, here's what's interesting. I was joking with Rodney because when we have the meet and greet, or when we're down at a Colson, I always camp way off in that nook by that dried up creek lately.
I've named that area. That's Bama spot. That's my special name for it.
And but Rodney and it's good to be over there because I can kind of let Moose run loose, and he's got to where his hearing isn't that great.
Yeah.
But Rodney and Karen usually camp over there with us. Well, I made the joke to Rodney. I said, when it gets dark, I said, I'm going to look for the Rodney Comet up in Kentucky, to see if it's up there too. Here we are sitting there one night, and it's me and Hoosier Squatch and Bigfoot Bob. They're camping in one big tent. I'm in a tent by myself. And that was it for the time being. And we're just sitting there by the fire, and I just thought I'm going to go see if that light's out there. And you know where my spot is. You just look out across that field. It's just beautiful. And I got to looking, and I found the thing. And I wanted to make sure, man, I sit there and watch the thing, man, and I watched it like, with my fingers like to a gun sight, and would put something stable against it. Me and Debbie at Bankhead were putting it against a stable tree object to make sure it was moving. We're trying to do scientific stuff, you know. But sure enough, there it was again. And I said, Jamie, come here and look at this. It's Hoosier Squatch. He comes over and I said, man, look at that. I said, Rodney spotted this. And by this time, and believe you me, with my mind, didn't know how to research it or anything. But this had to be some completely natural something that takes place natural that's out in space or something. Or I told Rodney, I said, it's like something that's within a layer of gases between us and the stars. And so it's like heat waves making it flicker and look like it's doing it. It's the only thing I could come up with. Sure enough.
Well, so let me ask you, you know, you've been there a ton. I've been there a pretty good bit. So, you know, they're keeping an eye on us. You know, the helicopters, when they come over and do a roll turn and turn right on top of, you know, and go back.
Yeah.
Even the night we were out with, you know, Debbie, Larry, and Kumbo and Spencer and all them, we were at the Field of 13 house. And what was wild was going back to that story that y'all experienced about the orb and the light. All of a sudden, this light appeared just above the tree line, looking to the right side of the road. If you, you know, away I don't know how to explain it, but anyway,
yeah,
you know where the camp is on the left up there. Okay, so we're looking opposite way. All of a sudden this light appears over the tree line, and I did the same thing you did. I'm like, that just came on, and there's a little bit of whispering like, uh-oh. And I'm thinking, well, if that's a helicopter, it's got to be coming straight at us.
Oh.
And then it turned, and I know, you know, being around Metro Nashville and their helicopters, did y'all ever have a light on a helicopter that would alternate like down, up, down, up, down, up, searchlight? It wasn't smooth. It would go down and then back up. It was definitely a helicopter, but
we had some really good spotlights on those things.
Mm-hmm.
But if you looked at it and saw this round globe looking thing, kind of like a security light, you know, that was our FLIR. That was a thermal on the front of our helicopter. That thing was awesome.
So this was a spotlight, and it was alternating like, but anyway, the question I got, it's like they kind of got close to us, and, you know, I'm sure, you know, Joe with Hellbent Hollers in here, and they spend a lot of time at the LBL. And I don't know if I had a theory, just throwing stuff against the wall. My dog was acting weird this time. Flat Rock's dog was acting weird. I talked to somebody else that their dog was a little bit off. And I'm wondering if they're either keeping an eye on us or helping us out. You know, if they are emitting some kind of sound, they know these things are there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And they don't make it a secret that they're checking up on you either. So I don't know what's going on there with the military, but I guess it's their job to, you know, make sure everybody's safe. But it's weird when I can understand one Passover, but we had multiples that one night, Wednesday or Thursday night, I don't remember. And
now,
it's almost like they wanted us to know that they were keeping an eye on us.
Some things to take into consideration is a lot of times when they have controlled burns, they fly in there at night, because at night you can see hot spots and, you know, in the woods and stuff like that. And listen, I'm not making up excuses for I'm not making excuses for the black helicopters. But and another thing is, you know, I keep up with like the state site and stuff like that. You know, shooting these hogs from a helicopter. You know, I mean, I hunted there for years, and I always, you know, we were always saying, why don't you let us shoot hogs? I mean, we'll be sitting there with a bow, and there'll be a line of 15 of them come by.
Right.
You know what? I mean, why won't you let us shoot them? I mean,
turn the hunters loose, and man, that's some of the best eating you can get as a
oh
wild hog.
man.
Now, speaking of the controlled burns, they definitely was doing that there. We went one day, Heather and I. Of course, we got there on Tuesday, so we had plenty of time. And we went past the field of 13 houses before I knew what that was. Took a left and went by the spot where Joe and Pat and Robert, got that thermal footage. And then I'm like, I don't know if we should go up this way, but they let us through, and the fire was coming all the way up to the road.
Yeah.
And it was some of the coolest lighting and smoke, and I got some really cool pictures of that. But I said, well, the workers don't look like they're panicking, so I'm not going to panic too hard. And I saw something the other day where they were talking about eradicating all the hogs out of LBL. That was on like an official website that somebody shared.
Right. All of them.
Now, now as a hunter growing up and then seeing a Bigfoot, several of those, and all this stuff that's happened to us lately, and I'm thinking, okay, if you get rid of the food source, then what's going to happen now? Will they get more, I don't know, I don't say violent or aggressive?
There's places at LBL. I was sitting talking to a man in this little town that I live in, and he's an accountant, but he's also a big hunter. And when I say that, I mean, he goes to, Prince of Wales Island. He goes to Alaska. He goes to Saskatchewan. So in his office, he has, I should have sent you these pictures. He has a big black bear mounted, a full mount in his office. And then on the wall, these pictures where he's done like, they call it the Big Five or something, that's your mountain goat, your caribou, see that? And, he and I were sitting there talking, and long story short, he goes, they flew me in a little plane to a place that a human hadn't been into it in 30 years. And and he said, they asked me, do you want to go in there and hunt? They said, we just had this area opened up, and we can do it. They said literally, nobody's been there in 30 years. And he goes, yeah, I'll go. And he goes, I wasn't really prepared, like weather-wise. Now, he hunts Alaska and stuff like that, so he's prepared than 90% of us. And he said, but they had to take me in by myself and drop me and said, we're going to go get your buddy, and we'll be back in about 45 minutes with his gear. He goes, great. And he said, are you going to be okay here alone if I'm not back in 2 hours? And he goes, sure. And he goes, because the weather here, gets pretty crazy. He goes, are you going to start getting really worried if I'm not back in 3 or 4 hours? And he goes, no, I'll be all right. He goes, could you stay overnight? And he goes, I think I'd be okay. And he goes, all right then. And he goes, that plane left. And he goes, when the sound of it, and he's one of these guys that not just doing all the hunting and getting in shape for it, literally training for these hunts, because you pay thousands of dollars to go on these things. So he's in that kind of shape, watches does lots of bushcraft. But, I said, you ever watch Alone? That's how we started this conversation. And he goes, I watch it all the time. He goes, one season, they filmed it where I hunt on this lake. I mean, it literally. And he said, when that plane left, he goes, man, he goes, there was just this feeling of just, wow, wow, look at this, just in awe, He goes, within an hour went by, and then an hour and a half, and 2 hours went by. And he said, then there was, he goes, the longer time that went by, he goes, the smaller and the tinier I felt out there. And he said something like, I was carrying, he goes, now I was carrying a 7 millimeter, Magnum and blah, blah, blah. And he goes, so, I could, he goes, I've hunted wolves. I literally have hunted grizzlies, he goes, so I wasn't too worried about that. And he goes, and then it started to, be more hours. He goes, and I thought, well, I guess I better, put a shelter out here, Long story short, he said he set a shelter up. He said, I was absolutely determined that I was going to be, spending the night not fully equipped. But he said, I just thought to myself, man, if I do this, I'll be something different. I'll feel differently, after I have to go through this. He goes, then he hears a plane in the distance, as it shows up. So when they talk about killing all the hogs, there's places in LBL that islands we were kayak to bow hunt and stuff. There's places in LBL that in the middle of the daytime it's just dark, and eerie in there and mossy, and it just like, there's places in there kind of like the Pacific Northwest. It's just like a rainforest in there,
I want to shift a little bit, talking about weird stuff. I think the next thing, we hear reports all the time. You watch documentaries and people that go out, miles into the woods and outside at night, and they talk all over the country. They talk about this metallic sound in their Bigfoot area, and we've heard that 3 times, but 2 times it was a little different, and the 3rd time it was on the south end of the county, and I almost thought it was an animal in a cage on another farm. I'm trying to go through that bank of
there you go
sound you're talking about, right?
It was in your Rolodex, wasn't
That's right. I'm like, yeah, Bama. And I'm trying to put it together like, okay, could it be a dog on a chain and the chain's hitting a metal water bucket? Or, I've heard that. And I couldn't place it. And this place is, pretty active, not every time, but certain times a year. And I know you've experienced a metallic sound where it shouldn't be. Could you tell us a little bit about that? Yeah.
I had heard mention of that, or somebody mentioned that before. And if you went back on the Sawdust Beast channel, I got to kind of, this is just the way my mind works. I got kind of hung up on it a little bit, and I tell everyone to watch this documentary. I was watching the Missing 411, The Hunted edition.
Such a great documentary.
I get chill bumps just thinking about it. And it's nothing about hunters that go missing, but you have to watch the end because they have Ron Moorhead on there, and there's all kinds of good stuff in there. Excellent, excellent documentary. And I'm watching the documentary, and there's a gentleman at the start of the documentary. His name was Thomas Messick. And on Sawdust Beast, I did an entire show on Thomas Messick going missing hunting. And the thing that really got my attention about that was in this group of hunters that he was with, the man closest to him had already passed away by the time they started doing these interviews. But one of the guys that was along this hunting drive row that these guys were set out on, he said he heard a strange noise. And when they were doing the interviews, they said, "Did you hear anything? Did you see anything?" And one of the guys, the man's son said, "Well, no, but so-and-so said that they heard something." So they end up going to this man. And of course, they get to ask him. He's still alive. And they said, "Did you hear something that day?" He goes, I just heard a little something. You'll have to watch the documentary. He goes, I just kind of heard a little something. And he goes, "Well, what was it?" He goes, just kind of a little, kind of a noise. And he goes, and he literally said something like, "Shh," and just kind of, and I think when he I've watched enough times. I think when he did that, he was more or less making a gesture as to the duration of the sound. I was just a little noise, like, I mean, that's the way we would say anything like that. When they ask this man's buddy who was still alive, what did he tell you? He said it sounded like a metal noise, like a giant, his exact words, a giant trap slamming shut. That's what he said it sounded like.
And that's the similarity is just what you said. That's the key. It's like a lot of people have compared it to like they'll be like 5 miles back in the mountains, no roads, and hear a car door slam. Similar. That's what they compare it to. So
I've heard it described too sometimes, almost like big bunker kind of doors, just that really loud scraping metal sound as well. That was the one that freaks me out.
Yeah. He used the word snap in there somewhere. Just, I tell anybody, it's funny, the guy yesterday, that hunts, all up in some rugged country. I used to go to church with him, is what it was. I said, I know I've told you this. I said, you got to watch Missing 411 The Hunted. I said, you got to watch that. But anyway, so that kind of got me hooked on that. Just that this was the closest thing to hearing or seeing anything that anybody had come across so far in one of these missing 411 cases. I mean, there's cases that I've actually been to the spot before where they have been in a row of people and simply go missing while they're hiking in a row of people, things like that.
I've watched those, and the scary part is, like you said, the people are within sight.
Yeah.
And then they're not, and they're never found.
Right.
Now, as a former police officer and somebody, the first thing they're going to do is look at everybody in that group and say, what did y'all do? But then there was one case, I don't remember, it might've been on one of those documentaries that Pilates did, but there was a gentleman that they were on vacation, and he walked back in a trail, maybe like in Utah or somewhere, and back in a canyon, one way in, one way out, bunch of people there, and he disappeared. No way, there was no way to get out. And somebody had a picture of him when they saw that he was missing, they took family photos, and there he's standing, and then he's never heard from again. And
I remember that one. Yeah.
That's terrifying because, if I watch the movie Jaws and I'm scared, like, it scared me when I was a kid, I don't go in the ocean. I ain't got to worry about a shark, right? But I'm a hunter.
Well, I had heard that in that thing, and I just thought, gosh, once again, I say this. When they asked that guy that question, he went into that memory bank of his brain, that Rolodex, and that is the closest thing. And this was an elderly guy. He's heard lots of things. He's got lots of things stored in there. So he went through that thing in his mind, and that's the closest thing that he could come to. A while back, now this has been this is before I moved back to Alabama. I had begun talking to a childhood friend down here. Her and her husband, have lived here their whole lives, childhood sweethearts. And she had kind of started seeing some things, and she would send me pictures of them every once in a while. And she goes, I know you'll think I'm crazy. She goes, and the people around here think I'm crazy. She goes, but I will go outside and snap pictures, and I see things, and sure enough, she would. Now, there's a couple of times, this is what's odd being in this little town she's in. There was one or two that really were drones. I could tell that from the picture myself.
Right.
And I just thought, who in the world in that little town would have a drone, But anyway, in our talk, and of course she wasn't crazy, because when she moved somewhere else, she never she never saw him again, over there. But she had put me on to a guy. Within this conversation, she said, "You're into Bigfoot and stuff, aren't you?" And I always answer people the same way. I always go, "Well, if you believe in that kind of thing, that's kind of like my aunt." And
Yeah.
she goes, "Oh, so and so, all four of them on a double date saw one cross the road." She started rattling off stories, and she said, "Well, there's a friend of ours that lives in such and such county. I won't say the name of the county." And she said, "Oh, they've had them on their property for years and years." And this is leading into the metallic story, by the way, for anybody that's wondering. Uh, and she go, "They've had them there for years." And me, I'm still in Tennessee, but I'm just chomping at the bit. You think this guy let me come over and mosey around on his land, and stuff like that. And you would have to take into account the county that he lives in down here, and it's a county. Ever since I was a child, it's always known for being a rough county. They do not like strangers or outsiders, and it's like that to this day even. And that's where this guy lived at. So maybe after a couple of months of kind of going through her to him, he let me text him. So I texted him, and he let me come out to his house. Now I remember I went and visited my mother, came down to visit her to go to this guy's house, and I had to explain to her where I was going and why I was leaving moose at her house. I mean, she lives, right out in the woods. She lives way out in the woods. And she's like, why aren't you taking moose with you?" "Well, I'm just going to let him hang around here, because I know people around here have some pretty rough yard dogs,
Right.
So I left him, and I told her that I forgot what I even told her. But sure enough, I got directions to his house. Typical dang slag Alabama road with potholes and stuff patched over 10 times. And, typical Alabama slag road where you have some houses and suddenly there's a church that everybody goes to and walks to in the community. I think it was a little Baptist church, And eventually I came to the guy's house right after I passed his well-manicured garden, which, he took pride in his. I kind of will eye the house and, and look at and see how the thing's set up and things like that. And I could tell the guy took, as I drove by, I saw it on my left, and I thought, man, that guy really takes, I really thought if my dad was alive, he would say, man, that's a fine garden that guy's got there. You could tell that. And when I pulled in, I got met by a big pit bull running loose out there. And it ended up being the friendliest thing in the world. And I got out, and here stands this guy, and he had somebody with him, understandably. I wasn't armed. I left my firearm in the truck, and I got out. We just kind of stood around there and talked a few minutes behind his house. And he said, man, let's go take us a walk. I said, all right. And we kind of walked to the edge of the yard, and it's vines and all kinds of trees and stuff. And he had him kind of a tunnel wore out through there. And as soon as you went through that tunnel, maybe 5 yards through, you came out onto, he said, as soon as we came onto this little road, he goes, it was like the stories started right then. He goes, well, this used to be a county road. He goes, and believe it or not, they used to maintain this road. And as he's walking, he's talking, he goes, my great granddaddy saw his first vehicle on this road. We're kind of talking. I'm like, this is going to be great, And I'm thinking, let's get to the Bigfoot stuff. Let's get to it. But as we're kind of walking down this road, now this is a road that there's like small trees growing up in it. You don't see there's no concrete or asphalt or anything. It's just, starting to be taken back over by nature. And as we're walking down through there, he points ahead. He goes, right up there's an old, I want to say that it was his great grandparents' home. He goes, their home sit right there, and so's home's there. And as soon as he said that, it was like he just immediately turned left and stepped off into the woods. Well, the other guy followed him, so I turned left and off into the woods I went too. And I'm saying this because it's kind of pertinent. It's weird because when you walked in there, all the little trees growing in that area, maybe it had been cleared off at one time and had grown back over the years, but they were all very straight and about yay big around, all of them. And we're just kind of walking through there. And it is so odd that he said this, because I only thought this. As I walked through, I thought, oh man, if Daddy saw those, he would think those was dandy tomato poles. And anybody from Alabama knows how you stake tomatoes up with tomato poles. Mm-hmm. No sooner than I thought that, he goes, my boy came in here to cut us some tomato poles one time. And he goes, sure enough, I'm serious. And he goes, you see us right here close to the house. He goes, so he just was going to, like cut a bunch and pitch them out there onto the old road and then put them in a wheelbarrow or something and bring them back. And he goes, well, he's down there, down close to the ground cutting these things off. He goes, and all of a sudden he just stood up, got to looking around, and he goes, and he got scared, and he just came running back to the house. And then the guy, listen, he just didn't say nothing else for a second. And I said, I'm like, what do you get scared of? And he goes, I don't know. He goes, that boy's seen everything. He goes, if something scared him, he said, and he made me come back down here with him. He goes, and walk that little distance. Even though I could see him, he made me walk in there with him to get the saw and everything, or the hatchet or whatever he's using, and come back out, to bring him out. And as he's saying that, we started kind of walking through woods then. And I don't know about y'all, but if I'm in the woods somewhere and I see like a big giant oak tree or something, you can tell a lot of times where an old home place has been by the trees that are there for some reason. I don't know why, but even if there's no remnants of the structure left, you'll still see those big trees and think that a house used to be there. Well, we're walking through the woods, and also I was told to go over there when it was cold weather because the, snakes and copperheads were so bad around there, and they are here. So we're in there in this cooler weather, and we're kind of walking through there, and I noticed those giant trees. Well, as soon as I noticed them, he said, well, here's where he's talking about his great-grandparents. He goes, here's where their house is at. And he talked about that tree. He goes, I know, like, me and this guy thought so much alike, because when I looked at the tree, when I see an old abandoned house, I think, gosh, there used to be laughter in there and families. And, so when I saw that tree through the woods, I thought, man, that would make a dandy place for a tire swing, for a bunch of kids. And he goes, well, we used to have us a tire swing or two up here on this tree here. And I was just like, man,
Bama, this is getting
all
a
the synchronicities.
Yeah, it's getting a little too freaky, because like one time it is, but 2 and 3 and 4 times, that's getting a little freaky.
And listen, y'all, I mean, this is all coincidental, but I'm just saying it's just weird,
Yes.
And so we keep walking towards it. As you walk towards it, you kind of come out of the woods and top a little hill. And this is the kind of place that has little outbuildings that have already fallen down and taken over. They have those old water cistern little buildings, where their spring has water. These places are old. So I'm kind of like I can recognize those things just from, what's in my brain. And we get to walking up to the remnants of this house, and it's fallen down enough to where you can't go into it. But, this thing probably had a story and a half to it, and you can see where things were added on to it. But, even the porch is way higher above your head. And it had all fallen down, and it was a old brick or rock or block around it or something. Well, as we're walking up there to it, he stops on the side of the house, and since it's built on a hill, and the porch is so high, they had kind of a storage area, like a quote unquote basement under there is what he called it. But, he goes, oh, that's where people back then kept their canning and their, kept stuff, cool, things along that line.
Like a
So he
root
goes,
cellar, basically.
yeah. So, he's freaking, he starts into that story, and I kind of get to walking ahead of him, because once I get to this house, I'm kind of like, wow, this is really a pretty big house to be out here, in the middle of nowhere. But this is all their land, in the middle of nowhere. So as he kind of stops, I kind of walk on around the front of the house, and I'm really standing looking out. I posted photos of all this on, I think, the Sawdust Beast page years ago. So I really walked to the front of the house where I could look at the front of the house, and you could kind of see through the basement. So if I leaned forward, I could look through some of the brick and look through the basement and see him out that side door, if y'all can understand what I'm saying.
Yep.
And he's talking to me through the hole, through the basement there. And he goes, yeah, one of them dang boogers got, he didn't call it a booger, but he goes, yeah, one of them things got trapped down here in the basement one time. And now, this is the first time he's alluded to anything.
Right.
At first it was just a feeling that someone had gotten, his son. But he goes, yeah, one of them things got trapped down here in the basement, And I want to say that it was his, I forgot who was with him or whatever, like cousins and things along that line. When I grew up, we were babysat by people that went to church with us as cousins, you wouldn't believe that it didn't take any prerequisites to watch kids back then,
Right.
Nope.
Well, he's kind of talking to me through there, and I said, down here where we're looking in, he goes, yeah, he goes, well, what it is, and I'm not making fun of him, imitate me, it's just the kind of drawl and the way this guy was. He goes, well, that thing got trapped down there because the door opens to the inside. He goes, so it goes in and the door closed behind it. And he goes, and we didn't know it was in there. It's so funny, but it was fascinating. And it's a comical story too.
Yeah.
But the thing that doesn't make you just laugh out loud is because you're standing right there looking at it.
Yeah.
And to me, I'm standing here looking at history, and I'm listening to history, right now that nobody will get to hear. And he said, well, then it just started tearing the basement up. And I said,
like he
really?
caught a raccoon in a cage.
Yeah. And the thing is,
big raccoon.
the part that I'm looking through and the porch and everything was, enclosed at that time. So it's really trapped down there, one way in, one way out. And he said it got to tearing the dang basement up. And I cannot remember. I've been done so much since then. I can't remember if they went up and did it or if it somehow got the door open. But he said, this thing ran out. And that's what he said was the thing. And he goes, and it was about yay high. And when he held his hand up, he was going maybe about 4 feet high or so off the ground. And he said, just came out and just covered in hair. And I said, no kidding. And he goes, yeah. And he goes, and of course, when it came out, all of them this is right by the big oak tree where they had the swing, and there's an old concrete picnic table still sitting there. So the thing came busting out right there. And he said, and the thing just came running out. And I'm like, what did it do? Did it stop? Did it? I'm just like, looking around.
It's almost as bad as seeing one. You won't know what he did. You won't know what it did. How did
It's like, I need more details.
Right. Well, he said the thing came out, and he said, now, if you picture it this way, by the time he gets done telling the story, I've turned to my left and I've walked back around the side of the house. So I'm kind of standing beside him, looking off down into this basement. Lots of light in there, but it's full of leaf debris and where it's caved in. And he said, well, it ran out right here. And he goes, and when it got right there, he goes, that thing turned left and across the road, the old road that used to be a maintained. So they actually used to really live right on a dirt road that had,
Right.
some type of little traffic on it. And he said that thing crossed the road and off into that hollow it went. And of course, when I looked then across the little, now we're talking looking 10, 15 yards. I looked across the little road. This is the only place that has that giant bamboo as big as it is over there on the farm where I work. And when I say big, I mean the size of a cantaloupe big. That's how big they are. And I looked over there, and of course, that whole hollow was full of those bamboo. And on the Beast Facebook page, I had taken pictures and video of that bamboo. And I just said, holy mackerel, look at that bamboo. And we get to walking over there to it. And he said, and it had to come from somewhere. He goes, yes, so-and-so buried it. And they do it a lot as a windbreak. Mm-hmm. If you see it, it's usually on the north side of a house where they'll plant it, and then it just gets out of hand. And so we're kind of standing there. And I said, well, what's on out the road? He said, well, once you get on out there, he goes, that's lease for hunting. And he goes, and them fellas don't like you coming around out there. They got a hunting cabin out there. And I said, okay. About the time he said that, off in that hollow, and, when I looked off in that hollow, there was, all these bamboo, but then it just kind of dropped off into a normal Alabama hollow. You can't see the bottom of it. It's just got a whole bunch of junk down in there. And I was kind of trying to imagine it in the spring or the summertime. And he goes, man, he dropped off in that hollow, and we're just kind of standing there looking in there. And all of a sudden we hear, I'm going to try to remember it the best I can. We hear this metallic noise, and it was it wasn't unlike a big piece of galvanized metal like you would have on a barn or something, because I'm around a lot of rusty old metal all day around that barn. But the sound of whatever hit it was like, it wasn't a dull sound. It was like a really crisp, snappy ting sound. I mean, even y'all try to imagine this with me in your head. Even something finer tipped than a normal hammer that you would use in your house,
like a ball peen.
So you understand how the tinier the tip gets, the difference the sound is on the tin. Yeah. And it was loud just one time, and I can remember as soon as it happened, we're kind of standing there in a little triangle, talking to each other. We all just kind of looked, and now this big old pit bull had gone with us, just monstrous dog, sweetest thing. But it had hung out with us, and it wasn't feeling anything or afraid to wander off. But it's hanging around with us. Even the dog, ting, when it heard the ting, all of us look. Even the dog looked. Well, then it doesn't go anywhere. It just kind of trots over and just kind of looks off into the hollow. And I said, and I remember turning around and looking back at him, and I said, y'all heard that? Now, these are guys that have dealt with him forever, so there's no doubt they're believers. I mean, you know what I mean? So I don't know why I said, did you hear that? But I said, did you hear that? And they said, oh, yeah. And I said, have you ever heard it before? And he goes, no, I ain't never heard that one. And I said, what's down there? And both of them in unison said, nothing. I mean, both of them at the same time. They said, because even my friend Laura that I had begun corresponding with down here, she told me, she said, if you go over there, she said, don't go in the spring or the summertime. She goes, man, there's really bad snakes over there. She goes, down in that hall's really bad. Incidentally enough, she moved to an area that backs up to, oh gosh, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of acres is owned by one of these big lumber companies. So it's been strip mined. So you have loads of spring fed, beautiful lakes that have grown around, and lots of, and all this, that, and the other. I need to go over and, poke around with her a little while. But that was the thing about the metallic noise. And let me say this before we go. We kind of stood there and kind of walked on out and made our way out. And we're standing there. And of course, I had to say something about his garden. He had a nice garden. Right. And I said, man, and I said, man, you got a good garden here. And I said, you ever seen a track anywhere? And the thing about around there and in Alabama is there's a lot of pine straw litter, so you sure won't get no tracks in it. Just, but once I got out there and saw, the way his garden was, all tilled up, I said, have you ever seen a track out here? He goes, years and years ago, he goes, we had things go missing. And I go, like what? He goes, oh, tomatoes, this, that, and the other. And I said, and he goes, and it was just kind of a little here and a little there. And he goes, and it was always over on that far side over there by the woods. And he said, well, then one time, he goes, we had plowed up closer to the woods. He goes, we didn't plant anything, but we went ahead and plowed on up there closer. And here I come in one morning, and there's one track. And he goes, and it looks like maybe that thing stepped one long step and put a foot down and then reached way out and took, whatever it was taking. Yeah. He goes, and he goes, not that they were robbing us or taking anything. He goes, but, he goes, I always started thinking about what I planted on that side, because instead of planting one thing over there now, I'd plant a little variety. So, they would have a little of each thing, or whatever. And he goes, and we never had a problem. And we're kind of walking on around the yard. Well, as we round the edge of this yard that backed up to where we've been up in the woods up there's the clothesline. And he said, so-and-so. There's so many grandmas and cousins and stories that I heard that I've kind of lost track of. He goes, so-and-so came out on the deck up there. We're standing at the clothesline. And he goes, came out on the deck out there, the smoke, just after dark. And said she looked out there and said, who in the world left that white sheet out there hung on the clothesline? Said she looked out there and it was a big, square-looking white sheet. And said she took 2 or 3 steps down the steps and took a draw and threw her cigarette down. You know how you squash it out with your foot? And she said when she looked up, the sheet literally turned around and just whoop off into the woods, just took off.
Oh, gracious.
And so naturally I asked him, I said, now, do you think that, I go, what did she think? Did she think it was a ghost or a haint, as they would have called them here back then? And he goes, no. He goes, she knew it was one of them things, but, it was a white thing. And, right then I said, well, you've heard about that. I mean, there's the famous Alabama white thing, which was really just kind of in one area. I believe that there's obviously more than one.
Well, Bama, just to interject, I'm 20 miles from the Alabama line, and we have Elora and Flintville. You heard the Flintville monster, and we got these ridges and BFR reports and all that, and you go look it up. I've heard several stories, even north of here, a few miles around the interstate, of white ones, from people like you're talking about, not people that see you in conference or whatever. It's just
the museum's taken in several reports of white ones all over, from Alabama, Tennessee, North Georgia, everywhere.
And another thing, reason I pointed out the distance, 20 miles is nothing. We could, if I was healthy, I could walk 20 miles in a day. So with these things taking up more distance with each step, who knows how far they could walk. But I've heard stories of them walking 20 miles for a water source, out west. and then they found tracks. But that's another story. But every time I hear that, the white thing, I always wondered if it's an albino, which had happened. And another thing, it's
You
like
know,
a deer.
what is the first thing you think? Oh, it's a white one. What's your natural inclination that you're going to make? Is that it's old, correct?
Yep.
Oh, it's white or it's gray. It has to be old. But that's not necessarily the case. I mean, you could have a genetic abnormality in it,
And
like you said.
and I guess, thinking about what we know about other animals, if you talk to a witness, which I haven't really dug in to any of the stories, if it has black skin, then it's not an albino, right? Or if it
Yeah.
has gray skin, if it has pink skin, like my dog.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess that'd be a good question to ask next time. Did you see anything other than the hair? But, we know people that have seen gray ones. You know people that
Yeah.
have seen grayish ones. So, and we've talked to several people that have older ones on their property and have, injuries and stuff like that, and they get thinner, we've been told. But that white thing, the first time I ever heard that, because I know what deer do. When you have a piebald deer or an albino deer, I've experienced this myself, and on our farm, and let's say a deer is half white, spotted but half white,
Right.
2 legs and all that.
Mhm.
The other deer shun them because they can't hide. I have seen
They
where
attract predators. That's right.
they can't hide. I have
Mhm.
seen that white deer on the side of the hill in the woods and during the winter, no other deer, put my scope on that deer, just looking at it, admiring it, and then
Yeah.
all of a sudden see a ear twitch, and then I start looking, they're laying behind logs, they're everywhere. So they started pushing this thing away. So that makes me wonder if that would be similar with these things. Just throwing,
Oh, I've
spitballing
thought
against
about
the wall.
It would make
Listen,
sense.
if when you get into this, you start thinking about stuff like that all the time.
Yes. Uh,
Here's what's interesting is we walked on around this guy's yard, and he was there by himself that day, and we're just kind of standing there talking. And I told you that there was a little church down the street there, maybe I don't know, maybe half a mile or so, and prior to getting to his house. And he said, well, on Sunday, he goes, my daughter, came home from church. He goes, and she came in and she just kind of acted strange. And he goes, and I just looked, he said, as soon as I saw the look on her face, he just said, I said, you saw one, didn't you? And she goes, I sure did. And he
oh,
goes,
no.
well, what was it? She just goes, on the way back from church. And it was just one of those classic road crossings from her right to her left up into the property, that we were just on. Just one of those deals where it crossed the road and up the bank into the pine, thickets it went. Yeah. But I just thought that was funny. Here's something interesting for people to think about. And I would like to talk to her, because this is going to sound strange to y'all. I kind of learned this when I would investigate traffic crashes and fatalities and things along that line. Is our eyes are programmed. We read from left to right all the time. So over the years, we really train our brain to do it faster to save time, because we really want to get through it and get it over with. So from left to right, we really move very smoothly. Now, y'all try this exercise later on. This is Bama's homework for you. If you go from right to left, you'll notice that your eye has a lot more nystagmus, is what they call it in your eye. It's the same thing that you get if you've been drinking. The task, not the test, but the task that they give you is called a horizontal gaze nystagmus, is what it's called. But even if you have anything to drink or anything, if you will look from right to left, you'll notice your eye kind of does things in stages because it just doesn't process things, you know, as fast. So you don't miss all the little fine details. You know, like you're reading, you don't, you know, right to left, you wouldn't miss all the little these and as's and a's and things like you're reading, you know. And I've heard hunters say a lot of times, or especially like special ops guys and you know, guys that I work with, is we never, if we were looking for a guy and we were posted up, we never looked left or right. We always scanned areas. I mean, we always scanned areas right to left instead of left to right when we were looking for somebody. So I just thought I would have loved to talk to that girl, but it took me 6-7 months just to get, you know, get a hold of this guy.
Yeah.
I had talked him into coming on the Sawdust Beast show, believe it or not. And I told him, I said, just kind of like I do right here. I told him, I said, we can obscure your face. And I said, and we can even change your voice and we'll do all that. And he backed out maybe the day before or the day of.
Well, I've heard
yeah.
non-believers, you know how you see comments and hear comments. We've all been victim of that. With one guy, his reasoning was a guest was too calm, but this guest that we interviewed had been dealing with them for years out west, the Pacific Northwest, California, somewhere out there. Had plenty of good evidence, good videos showing partial arms and elbows and jumping down, you know. So this lady lived with them in the area. And she was so calm, and the guy said, I just don't trust anybody that don't freak out about it. But you go to that guy that you're talking about, to me, that's more, especially one-on-one, talking to him, watching his body language and stuff. The fact that he was so casual about it, because as you experience things, you get used to it, you deal with it, you've already dealt with the first one. To me, that I like that, because that tells me they've had to learn how to deal with them, you know, deal with the fact that they're real and that they live there. And
somebody asked if that eye tracking was based on dominant hand. It sort of is. Like, it's weird. If you're right-handed, your dominant leg is your left leg. You know, it's just really strange. I've seen guys that can shoot offhand non-dominant eye, you know, it's as easy as I can shoot anything else. But yeah, that's pretty much the way it is. Y'all should try that sometime, though. Like I said,
I just did it. I felt the difference. I felt
there
the
is.
Yeah, I'll have to check that for sure.
And listen, and you can train yourself. Look, somebody just threw up the thing on there that said that they're a lefty. See, it's different a little bit for a left-handed person. They still read left to right, but they're a left-handed person, so their tracking's a little bit different. But I'm telling you something. I may be weird, but you know, I have a dash cam in my truck because of Land Between the Lakes. I mean, that's the reason I have it in there, because I think if I can ever see one, I can press a button and my dashboard cam will go back in time 10 seconds and it'll start recording from 10 seconds ago. And then it'll record 2 minutes, and then it'll record 2 minutes after I press the button. Now, here's what Kale says to me. She goes, you know good and well, after a Bigfoot crosses the road, she goes, you're going to be so freaked out, you're not going to be able to press the red button. And that's the truth. So that's why you put like about a something other gigabyte card in there that'll record 500 of those videos before it'll overlay itself, you know. So yeah.
The problem I found, I'll give y'all some advice in the chat. So I bought I called it a poor man's GoPro, and it was cheaper. It filmed fine. But the thing is, you buy them from other countries and they ship them in here. For them not to be, if if they record for an hour, 2 hours, they're considered a video recorder, and there's a
Oh,
higher tax. Yes, and so what happened when I got this one,
I
it
didn't know that.
recorded it in, like, 9 minutes to 12-minute intervals. So, I was constantly have to turn the thing back on. I didn't know it wasn't recording. So, go ahead and spend a little bit extra money to get
yeah,
a camera, recording camera,
yeah.
and just beware. I bought one, and it's a pain, but anyway. Um, when I first, started doing this, I was coming into this about the time the shift started. You started when there was more of, people would be careful about what they if you saw a Bigfoot, that's fine. You found track, that's fine. But if you saw an orb, you didn't talk about it. If you
Yeah,
heard that weird sound.
we were flesh and blood people. And in fact, in order to first join the beast group, you have to answer questions and stuff
Mhm.
like I'll be polite, and these type things. And then there was one in there that said, I believe that this is a flesh and blood. So of course I was, in that camp, it really took, it didn't take things I saw or heard to change my mind. I think it was really speaking to some people that were credible, good people, with nothing to gain or lose by telling a story. And these are people that just came out of the woodwork too. Those are my favorites. I
Those
love
are the good
somebody.
kind.
Yeah, I love somebody going to get groceries and they have a 8-foot gorilla cross a road in front of them. I mean, those are the best. Me and
Yeah.
Roger were joking about this, and y'all can remember Bama saying this. The Bigfoot world is the only place where you can be driving down the road, look over in a field, see a Bigfoot, tell it on a show. Next thing you know, you're famous. You're at conferences and everything, and you didn't do nothing. You're just
Yeah.
driving down. Look, you're just driving down the road, and you looked over and saw one. Suddenly, you have books out, and suddenly you got books out, and you got all kinds of stuff going on. I'm just saying. I always make that joke to people. I'll go. So you saw a Bigfoot. When are you going to be at the Smoky Mountain Bigfoot Conference?
And I was told that, like, when I finally told my stories, and got it out there, a guy said, "Don't be surprised if you start getting people to call you to be on shows." I said, "Why would they do that?" He said, "Dude, you saw one for 30 seconds."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He said, "That's a long time." And for my 14-year-old brain, I was all messed up, and my best description of what they, "Well, how'd you feel?" Well, it just didn't look right. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I
And you
have
know something? Didn't y'all just have Larry and Debbie on?
it's been a while ago. It's back when they got married. It
No,
was
Debbie and Larry were with her on Woodwalkers.
they might have been, yeah, they
Okay.
were.
I was listening while I was at the farm bush hogging one time. And here's what's funny. And me and Larry talked about this the last 2 campouts. They came to my Bankhead campout. We used to do a lot of shows. I mean, and the Beast channel had some really pretty good, guests on there.
Yeah, y'all go back and look that up and watch
Yeah.
those.
A lot of good shows. I did when I go back and look, I can't believe how many shows I hosted, with people. But it's funny because we kind of joked while we were sitting around. Larry says, "Oh, I do not care if I'm ever on a show again."
Yeah.
He goes, "I've been on so many shows." And when I got to looking at it, I remembered just how many shows I've been on.
Yeah.
I mean, a bunch. And what have I done? This is why I always tell people that I'm nothing. I don't think I'm anybody. I've never actually seen one. I've heard some incredible things that have changed my life and my brain and my views on religion. And those are the things I really do pray. Y'all think this is funny, but when I pray, sometimes I tell God, please just let me see one. You know, I go, just let me see one, because I know I know it'll do something more to me, but I've already taken those steps to get up
Right.
to that. If that makes any sense to you.
No.
But yeah,
Now I could,
but
you know,
and all to say, of all those shows I've been on, and I, believe it or not, Roger, I actually had somebody ask me to come talk at a conference one time, and I said, I don't have a PowerPoint. I don't have. I mean, I go, Bama is. I am a storyteller, and I don't embellish stuff, and I don't make up anything. I I just try to describe it to where if you're sitting there, you'll know you're right there
right.
with me. And I
You're
go, I don't think standing in front of a giant room of people I can be, even though I've done a lot of public speaking, I'm like, I don't think I can entertain a room. I don't think I can, follow up Ron Moorhead or David Politis or, somebody like that.
well, but you think about it. Has David Pilatus ever seen one?
I don't think so.
Right.
Hawk 6802 asked if I've ever seen one. Never seen one. When people ask me that, and here's what's funny: people that are big in the Bigfoot world never ask me if I've seen one, because they know if I've seen one or not. So it's usually somebody that just has found I'm into Bigfoot, and anytime they ask me, I always say no, but I've been 5 inches from one.
Yeah.
And then
Almost stepped on your head, didn't it?
Yeah, I go, I've been,
Yeah.
5 inches from one. And normally I sleep with my head the other direction. I don't even know why I had it this direction that night. It's just the way things happened out. But
Well,
Hmm.
tonight before bed, I'm gonna pray Bama sees one, because I want to hear that description, because I'm gonna tell you what's gonna
Yeah.
happen to you. Even though you're very observant, even though it's just like when you heard that first howl. You remember your reaction? You said a few things you said you shouldn't have. You had
yeah,
you know what I mean? You wouldn't have
Mhm.
done that at work, and y'all were trying to be quiet, and you were prepared, right? Something happened that you didn't expect. So the same thing's going to happen, but you'll be okay because of what you're made up. But it will mess with you. I mean, it will. There'll be so many different kinds of emotions and thoughts that go through your head. I would love to hear that story, because
Hmm.
there's today I'm out on the farm, and the guy I'm working with, he left on the 4-wheeler. And of course, all the dogs, we've got a bunch of farm dogs. They're like a roving pack of wild kids out there on the farm. I mean, they're all, healers. They're all into something if they're not fighting. But they all left with him. And I'm just kind of bent over between these rows of tomatoes, picking tomatoes. And, I've had that deal several times where I just thought, okay, stand up right now and just look around, and I'd stand up, look around, and I thought, if I see one, well, I can't tell people that I just had one of those weird feelings. I go, how do I explain why I wanted to stand up and look around? And
yeah,
if I tell them the reason, then they'll go, oh, you're making that up if you didn't have the feeling or something. Well, this morning when they left, I'm bent over in the dang rows of tomatoes, and a lot of times I will listen to headphones. I listen to y'all or Woodwalkers or something, but I didn't have it in because it was so nice and the birds this morning, and I just kind of stood up and looked across one of the fields, and I kind of picked out a tree out there that I bush hog around, and I just thought, what in the world would I do if I saw one standing right there about that 8-foot tall limb on the bottom of that tree? And I just kind of went through my head all the different things that I would think, or that far away, I was thinking, maybe I'd just stand here and look at it or whatever. And then for a second, I thought, maybe I would try to, somebody told me this one time. It may have been it wasn't pyro. I can't think of who it was, but I thought maybe I'll try to speak to him in like a Cherokee tongue or something,
Yeah.
and raise my hand and say "ooh ah" or something like that, And then,
Well,
and then, as soon as that went through my brain, I snapped right back to, dude, you would. I don't know what I would do,
well,
and all to say, I've was in a position for years to where they trained and trained and trained you, but you had no idea what the training was going to do or if it was going to take until you
yeah.
were right smack in the middle of it. And then sometimes it's great and sometimes it's not so good. When it deals with gunfire, it never is, but I'm talking about lots of other things. So
And look, gunfire is not like people think it is. A lot of times you hear the lead thumping around you first. You're like,
Yeah.
what is that?
Yeah.
But the thing is, uh, the training you've had and other stuff are probably going to help you, and you've thought about all these scenarios, so you probably be okay. But yeah, and I hope you do, man. I mean, because
it gives you a faster reaction time. Let's put it
Yeah.
that way. If
Yeah.
you went over, like me, unfortunately, I've been to church shootings before and school shootings and stuff. And when I sit in church, and I worked security at one church where I was at, and those people have never been to the things I've been to and seen it. So
Right.
it was hard for them to be serious about their security. And I have a friend that's retired that specializes in business, school, and church security. And he makes a fortune because he's good at it. And he's seen the same things I've seen. So when I'm sitting in church here, and Kel knows this about me, I just tell Kel, I go, you know where the exit is and you know where to go. And I go, because you can't stay with me. I go, because
Right.
I know that I know there's one guy armed in there because he actually wears his uniform to church before he goes to work. But he don't wear a ballistic vest.
Right.
I mean, I see things. And so I'm always telling her, I know there's 3 or 4 guys in here that are armed all the time. I'm just not sure who they are. And I know not a single one of them's ever been either in a gunfight or pinned down by gunfire. There's a huge difference,
Yeah.
And we went through that, Bama. There's a guy over, where Lawrenceburg is, right? In that area in Tennessee. It's straight north of you, but in Tennessee, where the Amish and all that, Etheridge and all. He came from over there. I'll make this short, but we had a meeting. He was a security guy, and we had an incident that was nothing, but it looked like it was. And 2 of us did what we were supposed to do. We headed it off. The one guy confronted the guy that just walked in out of nowhere with no shirt on, and we were having this meeting after church, and then he went to him, and I got in a doorway. You know what I'm saying? Backing him up a little bit, but not making it obvious and all that. And he come to us later. He said, a lot of times, just like you said, I come to these churches and I do this, and I leave thinking, I don't know if I did any good.
Yeah.
He said, but you 2 did the right thing, but like I said, it's totally different when it's real. I worked at the jail. I've been in the fights. I've been talked my way out of the fights. I've, you know what I'm saying? So anyway, but the training though, if you don't have any training, a lot of times I don't care if you're playing football, soccer, you're doing anything in your life. I've seen this a million times. If you don't have any training, a lot of times what you do is nothing.
And not to sound a certain way, but when the first time that I met, and I always call it this, an organized group, and an organized group was Mark and Shelley and Larry and Debbie, and Spencer was not as new as I was. I mean, Spencer had already been to it a little bit, but he'd never met any of them, and so it's like, I don't mean to sound a certain way, but I really thought I already had everything in the Rolodex in my brain that could go in there. I mean, I'd already heard things and seeing things, and I still had this curiosity, but that trip, man, really changed me. Like I said, it was really a kind of a fate thing, the way things came out and the vocals we got. But I drove away going, man, that is for real. All to say that I want to tell you this, because we'd taken a little note about it. Those first good vocals that me and Spencer ever heard, we were standing there, and after they were over, of course, we're still just standing on that road there listening. Well, we went and got in our vehicles, and away we went. I think we had 2 vehicles, and away we went. Went to another place, and eventually got back. Well, I asked later on, and Spencer can attest to this, and Mark and Larry and all of them can. I said, how long were we at that spot? And they said, after those howls, we were probably there another good 30 minutes. And I said, I thought we were only there like 5 minutes. And they said, what do you mean? I said, I don't really remember anything after the howls. I do remember that happening. But I remember maybe standing on the road, but didn't we leave after that? They said, no, man, we stayed out there a long time. Now, I'm not saying it was anything. I attributed it to fatigue, because we'd been going for 2 or 3 days and not really sleeping. I mean, we were just I don't know if they were testing us, or what was going on. But but I had that lost time. It felt like lost time, and I really confided in Mark with it himself first, and that was it. I never really told anybody else.
Well, the thing is, when you have something happen, and I'm been fortunate to have at least one other person with me, so I can look at them and say, what did you just hear? What did you see? You know what I mean? To kind of confirm. But so when the first time you heard those howls, you knew they're not in your memory bank of sounds. So your mind's analyzing, you know what I mean? And you're like, it's not a euphoric feeling, but it almost is a little bit. And I think it's similar.
Have you ever been going down the road and somebody pull out in front of you? Well, they don't actually pull out in front of you, but they almost do. They kind of pull forward just enough to give you that feeling of.
Yep.
It's almost like it happened and processed in my brain so fast that maybe for the first quarter second, I thought somebody's playing a joke on me, because because that's the only thing my brain came up with, because nothing was logical right then. The sound that I was hearing, it didn't fit. Like I said, it didn't fit into the Rolodex anywhere. So just for a fraction of a second was somebody's playing a joke on me. Then once it got to going on and the harmony started with another one too, and I could kind of judge the distance. The thing that really shocked my brain and my system so much was when my logic finally convinced me that is not a man up there. Because I don't know if I said that out loud or was saying it over and over to myself, but I remember going, that is not a man. That is not a man up there. I mean, if you heard it, you would know that it wasn't a man. But
and that's the hardest thing to explain to people. Not only is it hard to explain, but you can show them those amazing recordings. There's several people we know have got them, and it doesn't do it justice. It doesn't have the you can't hear the distance. And when you're standing there, it's like gunfire. You're trained to listen to gunfire. You can kind of pinpoint after 2 or 3 shots, like it's coming from that area right there. And people, this is the kind of stuff you go through when you're hunting and all that. When you hear a sound and you're in a hollow, you can track it back. The echoes back.
It's funny you said that. People at work always said all the time, they said, man, you must be like and I don't mean this to be an insult at all, but they said you must be at like the high end of the spectrum,
Mm-hmm.
or have something like that. And the only reason they were saying that's because ever since I was a kid, I've had this weird obsession with picking out the patterns in things, the patterns in sounds and things like that. I know that's simple, but I'll explain what that means.
I understand it.
So if we were, and this happened frequently, if we were out in the projects at night and we're out of the cars just kind of standing around, you'd hear a dang gunfight pop off somewhere. And 98% of the people I interview that have been through bad stuff, they always start out saying, "Oh, I thought it was firecrackers." Kale is trained to where her first rule is there's no such thing as firecrackers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, that's just the way she thinks now too. She's seen me get up and leave church during a Christmas program when firecrackers went off outside, because that's just me. But we would be standing there and hear a dang gunfight pop off over there, or just one person. A lot of times they just do some distraction to get everybody to go over yonder, somewhere, and just no rhyme, no reason to just tut 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 tut, just through there. And as soon as I heard it, I'd listen to it, and people would look at me, and they would go, "How?" And I could pick out the pattern in my brain. It was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then I would get the other overlapping one, and I would go, "Oh man," I would go, "That one that was 9 shots was a 380, and the other one sounds like it's maybe a 9 or something." And they would just start laughing because I would pick that out. There's times when we've been there and we literally have heard the rounds pop off like that, and 2 seconds later, them hit the dumpster beside us.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it got to, I worked in an area where you're standing talking to a citizen and gunfire went off. You didn't stop talking. You just kind of hunkered your head down a little bit. That was true life.
Well, so we need to talk more privately, because I'm kind of the same way. From experience, we shot a lot growing up, and the neighbors did and all that. And my daddy could do it. He could tell you what they were shooting and all, but I do that too. I can replay it in my head and say that was 13 shots. And how do you do that? Like that was a 9mm. That might have been 223 556. Popped off.
Yeah,
but not in a stressful situation like you were, right? But I don't know what it is, Bama.
But see, if you're in a place that's a stressful, this is what I came, man, you wouldn't believe where I came from. I'd never even really seen a police car. Okay. And then you end up during the crack epidemic in this large city in one of the worst project complexes. When you're in a place that's stressful all the time, it gets to where it's not stressful for you just because. So that's why I tell people, I go, there's kids here, there's people here, there's older people here and stuff that, especially the kids, they don't know it's bad. They don't know at 3 years old that they're not supposed to be outside at 2:30 in the morning because their parents are outside. I go, it's kind of something you got used to. Luckily, I was in my area long enough that I was recognized. Of course, I had all my tattoos there at the end. I was recognized. I'd been there enough years to where I had seen people grow up, and then whatever happened to them happened to them. So people they knew me, and they knew what I did not want to have to show up on. Let's put it that way.
So I'm gonna say one thing. Heather tries to scare me all the time, and she'll make loud noises, but whatever, and I don't react to them. And she said, "Why don't you react to them?" I said,
"Boy, I do." Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. But you're different with what you've been through. But you're talking about brain processing. I said, Heather, I've already processed what the sound was.
Yeah, that's true too.
You know what I'm saying? So I already know it's a hand slap on the table. I already know. Now, it ain't saying something can't scare me. I'm not saying that. But anyway, so I want to wrap this up, and we got plenty to talk about. But are you opposed? Because this Bama story time, we had one last time. It was great about Barbara Mandrell's house and all that. Was it Barbara?
Listen, let me tell you what I did, and for the listeners too, if there's still anybody here.
Yeah, there is.
Well, first of all, I appreciate everybody in chat. I saw lots of familiar, names and stuff, and y'all are my family. I love all of you. I really, after I sat and talked to you that night, I started keeping notes of all these stories, and I took a lot of stories that were good ones that I can actually tell anybody, but the majority of them you can't. Because they're truly bad things.
Yeah.
But I have pages, and if you took them out of context and simply read the line, I can't even really say some of them, but I would just write it in a way to where I could remember what the story was. And it's funny to go back and read the line and just start laughing. But yeah, that would be great. That work is, this will sound cliche because I've heard it say a lot. They go, oh, it's 98% boredom, 2% sheer terror. It's actually a lot more. Once you're calloused, I hate to say that, once you're calloused and have been there a while, there's more comical stuff. You see the comical side to even horrible, situations.
And I've seen this, from experience, when terrible things happen, the seasoned guys handle things with humor, not really meaning it, but to deal with it. And the younger guys didn't know how to handle it, and we get mad at the older guys, and because they're saying certain things. But I realized early on they were just, I'm sure when they got home it was a different story. But
you've been there a while when you stand there eating a tuna sub over a decomp.
So, are you opposed? Because we have a lot of people we all know, but we have a lot of people here that has never seen you before. Are you opposed to telling the Ronnie Milsap story?
The what?
The Ronnie Milsap story.
Do you mean to tell it right now?
Yeah, tell it right now. We'll
I'll tell that, and then we'll sign off, okay?
Okay, yeah, because y'all, so for y'all, the ones that
you may tell you, the funniest thing about the story is when I told it, this is a common story. And thanks to Hillary for putting my my YouTube channel up there too. My YouTube channel is me shooting slingshots. I just do little 30-second, shorts of trick shots and things like, for kids or whoever. So it doesn't take up much of your time, even if you subscribe.
He's entertaining. I like his britches.
Yeah, I don't have any audio. I don't talk. Believe it or not, I don't talk in any of the videos, and I just, it's just shooting fun. But what's funny about this story, they've come to call it the Ronnie Milsap story, is when I told it, Spencer thought it was hilarious. And he thought it was funnier than anybody. And here's the story. In the area of town where I worked at, I had lots of stars, movie stars, country stars, soap opera stars, anybody you could think of, kind of scattered out there. And I'd probably driven by this house over the years easily hundreds of times. Now, you think, oh, I'm exaggerating. No, this was on a main strip, and I went up and down that strip 50 times a day sometimes. Well, here's this nice house, all fenced in with a big fence all the way around it. I'm talking like a brick fence, and a gate. I had never been to the house. I've been in this area of town for many, many years. Well, we get an alarm there one day. So I go down there to it, and sure enough, there's this gate. Now, this isn't like a mansion, but this is a very nice single-story home, with a pool. And the main thing is it does have a lot of real estate around it for this, area of town also. Right. So this is a well-to-do area. And I rang the little box there at the gate. Of course, there was no response, and I'll ring it again, no response. So I backed out and I'm kind of driving along with the fence, with his brick fence to my right, and I see a guy down there mowing. So I just whipped in the next driveway and got out. And of course, the guy stopped, and I said, "Hey, how are you?" I said, "Do you know your neighbor?" I said, "Their alarm is going off over here." And he goes, "Well, I ain't seen nobody in or out." He goes, "That's Ronnie Milsap's house." And I said, "Well, his alarm's going off." And now I've been to lots of famous people's houses on not really great stuff. But this was just a burglar alarm. And well, I looked over on this guy's property and he had some scaffolding leaned up against the fence. And I said, "Man, you mind if I climb your scaffolding there and go over into his yard?" He goes, "Man, have at it." So I just climbed the scaffolding. I mean, if I come to check your house on a burglar alarm, man, I check your stuff. I check your windows. I check your doors. I'm going to come in there and check. That's just the way I did things. So over I went. The first thing you do is you learn all the tricks to see if there's a dog in the yard, and we'll get to those next time. Because I learned all these from people. There wasn't no dogs running loose. It would have been a beautiful place for a big shepherd to be loose in there. But and this was when I was working K9 too, you know. Well, I jumped the fence, started kind of walking around. The first thing we normally do is go and knock on a door or something first. Because if it's a false alarm and you look out and see the police walking around your backyard looking, peeking in your windows, that's just going to scare you to death. So, of course, I went and rang the doorbell. Wasn't no answer for a minute. And I kind of backed up, was looking around some cars on the carport and feeling of the hoods of the cars. There's another trick you learn. See if the hood's warm. See if anybody just got home. Set the alarm off. All of a sudden, the door opens. And I turn around and look, and I hear like, "Hello," and I walk over there. And as I get to the door, I look, and there's Ronnie Milsap. I mean, we listen to him on Sunday mornings before we go to church on the 8-track back then. You remember that?
Yeah.
And
I still got some in this closet over here.
And of course, I recognized him, instantly. And in my mind, I remember just thinking, it's Ronnie Milsap, and I've seen him before at functions or where I was working security or something like that. And I said, "Mr. Milsap," I said, "I'm so-and-so and your burglar alarm's going off." And he goes, "Well," and what it was, he had a relative coming to stay with him that hadn't been there before. They'd set it off, something, blah, blah, blah. And I said, "Would you like me to come in and yeah, Catherine McSwain's comment down there." Somebody already came up with that one. I'm sorry, but I asked him. I said, "If you if you're here by yourself, I can really take a good look around for you." And he goes, "Well, I'd appreciate that." And I said, "I've kind of walked around the back," and I remember walking in the house. And I really didn't think about this, but I got my flashlight out because it was dark inside the house. I mean, and look, I didn't think about it. It never crossed my mind. It's the middle of the day. And then all of a sudden it dawned on me. There's no lights on in the house. It's dark in here. Other than, whatever shades or ambient light was open. Now, if it had been nighttime, it would have been dark in there. And for some reason, it took me just a minute to realize that, well, he doesn't have to really turn the lights on in the house. He knows his way around the house like we would know our way around our own house. And Spencer just rolled laughing about that. He thought, what's funny is we do a lot of camping and hiking. Our mountain spot is close to Robbinsville, North Carolina. Well, that's where Ronnie Milsap's from. So the last time I was in their little visitor center, wasn't nobody in there. I'm talking to the lady, and Ronnie Milsap, they have like a festival, for him, every year that comes up. And I said, "I got to tell you this Ronnie Milsap story." And I told it to her, and she thought it was hilarious.
Well,
What's funny is I got the alarm again one time, and this time I went to the gate and rang the gate, and somebody went, "Hello." And I said, Mr. Milsap. And I said, this is so-and-so. And he goes, oh, the alarm again. I go, yeah, this time he actually opened the gate. And I didn't go in the house this time because he had already, been there all day. So I just went around the outside. But anyways.
Well, Heather smacked me in the back of the neck one time because we were talking about stuff like that. And she said, oh, I saw Ronnie Milsap at the Nashville airport one time. I said, he didn't see you.
Oh, my goodness.
Back of the head. So, Bama, thank you for being here, buddy. Me and you both could talk for hours and hours. And
well, man, I love y'all. I love the everybody in chat. I'm glad y'all hung in there for a little while. Maybe, and for anybody that ain't listened to it that's listening later, man, that's really why I'm long-winded, descriptive. Is I think about guys that are long-haul truckers that are driving, listening, or like me, man. I love to listen when I'm bush hogging, on the earbuds, and I want to hear it. So, man, that's just me, y'all. I am what I am.
Well, the thing is, a storyteller is painting pictures with words. And so my whole family was like that. My dad hunting, how a deer hunter is. He'll go through waking up, putting his underwear on, and then, so anyway, thank y'all. Y'all, there's so many funny stories and stuff that we could tell. I wish I had another channel so we could just do that sometime. But
hey, remember that. Take a note of this. Who's Your Squatch just wrote, "Don't sleep in a moldy tent." Remind me to tell you that story sometime.
All right, and y'all, thank y'all for being here. Bama, appreciate it. Text me sometime, and I'll try to get that gift to you.
Yeah, brother.
I got them put up for you. So, and we, y'all. The Bigfoot community as a whole is great. And sometimes drama happens in public and all that. And it kind of hurts all of us. It hurts. No, back up. It hurts the subject a little bit. So, we appreciate y'all coming in and talking to each other and, being nice and asking how you're doing and all that. And that's just, to me, that's just the best part about all of this, so y'all keep it up.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bama.
Man, thank everybody in chat, and thank you, Roger, and thank Amanda too.
Oh yeah, she had to take off, so
yeah. I'll see y'all on the next one.
All right. I'll talk to you later.
Later, y'all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
The pines where the water runs black, where the moss hangs low and the night leans back. The stories whisper about a shadow tall, big feet moving where the moonlight falls. Some say it be, some say it ghost in the trees. Some say trouble blowing in with the breeze. But around here, man, we know the call, or we just call them friends, the Squatchin Holler. So light that fire, let the cattail shake, hear the night birds cry and the copperheads wait. If you hear a howl in the Georgia fall, it ain't no wind and it ain't no dawn. When the creek runs cold and the shadows get taller, yeah, you cross a line in the Squatchin Holler, where the legends walk and the brave men falter. Better mind your step in that Squatchin Holler. Tell me stories about a thing he saw, stood 10 foot high with a timber jaw. Red eyes burning like a summer cold, a left track's big enough to swallow your soul. But the old folks laugh, say don't you fear, critters been living here for hundreds of years. Treat them with respect when the moon gets smaller, and they'll let you live in Squatchin Holler. So light that fire, let the swamp drum roll, you can hear that beat right down in your soul. If you hear a grunt from the river dead, some say he walks from bridge to bridge. But one thing's sure, when the night comes down, something big still calls this ground. So bank that fire, let the night get deep, let the willows whisper while the kudzu creeps. If you catch a glimpse through the midnight holler, just nod your head